Um, yeah, like in our last, yeah, we've been trying to work this out for a minute now, and specifically with my vision and that just that feeling in my gut of where I want to be,
Hmm.
uh, and not really know. I mean, obviously, all this is exploratory. I mean, and this is the most exploratory place I've ever been in my
Life is exploratory.
right, and I love, and I absolutely love it. Sometimes, I mean, that's the challenge in an exploratory place, though, right? You're like, sometimes you're ready for like, oh, where's the answer, or where's that thing I'm looking for? It's like, no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
Um,
It's often quite chaotic.
oh, the chaos. Oh, I love
Yeah.
it, but it's challenging sometimes, man. And
How often are we hearing that word now? Chaos.
yeah, oh, it's chaos. I'm like, it's always been there. It's always
Yeah.
chaotic. It's just now people are kind of understanding some of that. And I mean, it's not always been this chaotic. This is
Yeah,
this might be a different type of chaos.
for real. Yes.
Um, but yeah, how have you been, man? Because um, I don't know how many people are checking in on you because your job is to support other, right? And the more that I develop as a social worker, and I recognize that it's really easily to isolate in these um, fields where you're supporting people, you're constantly checking in on others,
Hmm.
and you really can. I mean, I've been now. I'm finally there. I'm like, oh, damn, I'm not good. I need to take a step back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, how you been?
Yeah. Um, so before we dive into that,
Okay.
I first want to acknowledge that we're having this conversation on Martin Luther King Day.
Oh,
And and while this is a major holiday, with especially with all of these things going on in the world, that somehow after all the rescheduling, it feels appropriate that we're having this conversation on Martin Luther King Day.
mm-hmm.
So just acknowledging that first, and yeah, thanks for sticking this out and making this happen.
Oh man, you beat me to the punch. I was gonna throw that in there a little
Oh
bit.
man, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
I thought about that when I took a little I had to take a little 15-minute. I don't know if it was sleep. It was intended to be kind of like a meditation,
Yeah.
but I kind of slipped into argue. Yeah, there might have been a time where I fell asleep for a second, but yeah, I
Hmm.
thought about that. I reflected on this conversation happening on Martin Luther King Day, and um, yeah, this is, I think, through all the chaos, it's like conversations like this where we can visually see what, like, the conversation's still happening.
Hmm.
This is where, yeah, I think there's a lot of great work happening. There's a lot of good things happening. We got to
Yeah.
recognize that. But I'm glad you said. I'm glad you mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems appropriate that this day is kind of falling in the middle of this like super intense period of chaos. This time to reflect
Hmm?
um, on his work and where we are in this movement.
Yeah.
So to your question, yeah, I went and did like a 30-minute walk. It's almost 80 degrees where I am today.
Okay.
It's crazy.
Where are you?
I'm about an hour and a half north of San Francisco, up in near outside of Healdsburg.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. So that was my little bit of self-care, in this moment.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm doing well. And as healthcare workers in the mental health field, I think we have to be very careful about knowing when to ask for help and support.
Mm.
And hopefully, in your training, that's really emphasized. And, I know a lot of people new in the field are required sometimes to work with a therapist, but not always.
Mhm.
But as we go into it and our caseloads fill up, and we we might not even be aware that we're taking on this responsibility of caring for others.
Yeah.
And then often, like I'm right now helping to care for my elderly parents,
Mm.
we take on the responsibility of caring for people who are not our clients. And And so, yeah, how important it is. And for me right now, so much of that comes from being in nature
Mm-hmm.
and being around plants, trees, animals. Um, yeah, I'm next week. I start a plant spirit medicine course that I'm taking to kind of dive further into that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, seeking out support from other humans in my life, but also making sure I call on Mother Nature and receive that support and know how to find that support.
Sure. Yeah, you got to tap in. I'm up here in the mountains of Virginia uh,
Mm-hmm.
right now, and man, total reset. Total reset.
Mm-hmm.
Getting out in the mountains, hiking, getting out about 10 miles, sitting, reflecting, meditating.
Mm-hmm.
Um, moment, a lot of gratitude, and not only just for the opportunity to be able to take take those hikes, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, just a time, man, just a space away from. We said the chaos, but I think it's just more. I mean, specific, I would say leaving San Francisco. We talked about
Yeah.
this before. Like San Francisco it has been going through a massive change, and I don't know about other cities. I would assume New York is probably up there as well. But just a real eerie feeling
Mm-hmm.
when a
Yeah.
you know when there's a stay at home order and then businesses are closing. Not only businesses, social services for
Yeah.
for a city that was all that served quite a few people um, in their mental health
Yeah.
battles.
And yet it was already like really stretched thin.
Yeah,
Like, yeah. And you see more people on the street there and it feels heavy. I mean,
mm,
I can imagine New York feels similarly, and that's sort of what I'm reading.
yeah,
And I think in our urban areas, there is a greater sense of, I don't know, desperation.
yeah.
As wonderful as a city San Francisco is, um, just yeah, that feeling of really being pushed to the limit.
Yeah, yeah, man. It was time for me to go, and,
Yeah,
and I'm glad I had the opportunity to come out
yeah.
and visit
I'm
my
glad
dad.
you were able to land in a place where you feel supported.
Yeah, yeah. It's so fascinating, man. I'm staying in my. I said goodbye to. I said goodbye to the house that I grew up in. My mom's building was up for sale,
Mm,
and that was a whole. I didn't. Again, being overwhelmed with school and not taking the time, not really having the time to process what it's like to say goodbye to your
mhm.
childhood home. Uh,
Yeah.
I did get an opportunity. I've got an opportunity several times, and I think that'll continue. That's not just a couple week thing.
Mhm.
Those are gonna. I'm assuming there's gonna be times where I'm not even expecting to like think about it, and then boop, there it is. Like, oh shit,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, let me sit with this. But I'm in the house that my dad grew up in because he lives in that house. So it's kind of a weird sequence of events
Uh-huh.
to leave one place and then come to another. This wasn't the place I grew up, but yeah, to be around this and have some conversations with him about his upbringing in Roanoke, Virginia, and
Mm,
what's going on right now, and how in some
mhm.
senses there are some similarities, right?
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
but yeah, but man, that nature part, whew, whew, what I mean, what else would we do? What else
He's
would
there for you. Yeah.
always? Oh,
Yeah.
um. So, are you? Do you see? I know. So you mentioned, you know, um, folks new to the field can be required to work with a therapist. And that
Mhm.
wasn't a requirement in my program, but I definitely went like I I went to go get one ASAP.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
because I'd stopped seeing my therapist about a couple of years ago, and then yeah, I was like, well, this is probably good for a couple of reasons. One, just to take care of myself, right?
Mhm.
I need that, and then uh, also a new experience of seeing a therapist. Right now that I'm
Right.
pursuing this thing, like, oh damn, okay, I can like sitting here. There could be a different type of conversation that happens here,
Yeah.
and that was interesting in itself. Though I'm not gonna lie, the first few sessions, I was like, this doesn't feel like therapy like it used to. You know what I mean? And that's for a number of reasons. That's my brain is, um, my life is in a completely different place than it was 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And this is a new therapist. Interesting too. This is the first time I'd ever worked with a black therapist, and he was a black male. And I was like, oh
Hmm.
damn, okay, cool. Like this is really important to
Hmm.
um, yeah, to just share that space, and
Hmm.
um, and yeah, just you really unique
Yeah.
experience.
So did it feel like it also took on, now I'm going to ask you some questions. Did
Hey,
it feel like it took
come on,
on
man, this is what we do. Come on.
did it feel like it also took on like a mentoring relationship in addition to the
Absolutely,
therapeutic? Yeah,
absolutely.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And it was, yeah, it was strange because again, there's this. I still I still had this idea of what therapy was.
Hmm.
And I think that's a part of this. This was also a part of breaking out of um, this model that was in my head. Right,
Right.
it's like, yo, every therapy does not look the exact same at all, and it really is about that. It was the relationship between him and I
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that appeared so much
And that
different.
opportunity to then like move into it from this sort of like meta view.
Yeah,
You're not just a client now, you're a therapist in training and observing the therapy process. What it, for men, we're in this caretaking role, what it means to be a man in a caretaking role, what it means to be a black man in a caretaking role,
mm,
that relationship, as you said, how to observe that, nurture that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, so really beautiful in that sense, right? Like it was strange because there was a lot of things that I had to work through. I mean, at that time I was feeling, like extremely emotional. Like I was surprised. Like I knew I was going through quite a bit with the program. But it was interesting to kind of go through these moments where I wanted to cry in some of the sessions,
Hmm.
and I was still holding back. And I
Hmm.
recognized that I was holding back because like I was like, man, this is still strange because I'm not accustomed to crying in front of other men.
Hmm.
And then I had to go down that rabbit hole of, is it not crying in front of him because he's a black male? Is
Hmm.
it you're not, is it just because he's a male? Is it just this point in time where you're not ready? Because clearly I can cry. Had great cries solo, and I've
Uh-huh.
had some. I've been around some people where I've cried, but even that was was just like, oh man, damn. Okay, well, I was happy though. I was happy that I could talk about
Yeah, so I was going to ask, did you get to explore that with him and kind
it.
of dig into that? And
Yeah, we got into a good one with that, and I just set an appointment to come see him now at schools because he works on campus,
mhm.
um, or well, virtually now, but whatever. Yeah, and yeah, so yeah, just really complex, and um, I'm eager to go back.
Yeah,
I'm eager to
sounds
go
like
back.
beautiful work. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, we said in our early conversations when we were talking about, maps and the work you've been doing there, and that's kind of what led me, after you came and spoke to the class, the question I asked you about, where does social justice and intersect, and specifically talking about the history of communities of color and law enforcement and
Hmm.
oh man, how does that impact your work, and how is that are these conversations happening, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's kind of where I saw, that's where I see my place. Like I need to be that person for someone, right? If,
Yes, and that question feels even, more relevant and important today than it did just those, few months ago.
yeah,
The need for that is intensified.
I I feel like we're headed, like it's hard. I mean, I don't know. Is it hard for you to is it hard for you to see the 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 great work that you're doing in the midst of so much fucking negativity?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sometimes, yes. You know, working on a phase 3 FDA clinical trial, sometimes you can just get buried in the paperwork and the minutia, and particularly during COVID and how things have been delayed and just dragging on.
No,
Yes,
no,
and generally what it takes is being with a study participant or with a client,
yeah,
and and getting that opportunity to witness in the moment the impact that you can have on someone's life, or um, and then that reminder of, oh yeah, because it's the people, it's the relationship,
yep,
that's that's what's important, and that's where sometimes that's where the social justice happens, that's
mm-hmm,
where the healing happens, that's when the reparations happen, that's when you
yeah,
have the gift, the opportunity to engage in that.
yeah, yeah. It's I was talking to um uh, I was talking to a EMDR therapist in Connecticut who also facilitates psilocybin assisted therapy.
Mhm.
And oh, it was from the Atman Center, the
Oh yeah,
retreat center that you sent me. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
and so I connected with Kate, and I just talking about this retreat center, because I looked at it and I was like, this is fascinating. I was like, this place is in Jamaica, and I was looking at the website and I was like, all right, so it's majority white clinicians or facilitators, and I was like,
Mhm,
okay, and this is on the island. And I don't know that many people from Jamaica, but I tapped in with a couple folks to ask them, it is legal in Jamaica,
mhm.
but do people use it? He was like, yeah, not really. He's like, not that I know of. I was like,
The
oh,
ganja capital.
you're right. He was saying, so everybody smokes weed. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't know about psilocybin. So that was super interesting
Mhm,
to hear. And then she was telling me about someone else opening up another retreat center. And yeah, it's just, like I said before, this is extremely exploratory place. I've been sending emails to people, just
mhm,
being okay with the process of communicating and asking questions about how do I participate in.
mhm,
And it was, I'm extremely grateful for you sharing that meeting. The I think it was the indigenous practices.
mm,
Was it?
mhm. Yeah,
That was a great place to start.
yeah,
Extremely great place to start, because that's essentially what we're trying to do with so many areas, right?
right.
Let's work on our cultural humility when we're approaching these very sensitive topics, and especially when we're talking about something as something as um, old and rooted in ritual
Mhm.
as plant-based sacred medicine. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, and especially when we're coming in as like the facilitators and white people talking about racial trauma, and and really acknowledging that as you said, it's all experimental and we don't know what we're doing, and on the one hand we are planting seeds for like the indigenous wisdom talk that I shared with you, and um, creating these connections between communities, and
mm-hmm.
um, but at the end of the day, we really don't know what we're doing.
No,
We hope we're doing healing work,
sure.
and we certainly, hope we're not harming anyone.
Yeah.
And I don't in general don't think we are, but yeah, there's just so much to learn, and yeah.
Yeah. No, one of the takeaways that I got was, I can't remember her name. I'm drawing a blank right now, but she reframed well, we'll just say plant-based medicines,
Mhm.
not as substances or drugs, but technologies.
Yes.
And I get 110% on board. I get
Yeah.
110% on board with that. It is a technology. You're tapping into something
Absolutely.
totally different,
Hmm.
um, that gets out of this kind of dualistic way that we approach life, right? Not something she was talking about, right? And a lot of
Hmm.
um, these Eurocentric cultural practices, it's religion and science, and if it doesn't fit within that confine, then we don't really know what to do with it,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that's where I really see MDMA and psilocybin, um and other, I've yet to try ayahuasca. um still out on that one. I still, I
Just
think,
another technology.
yeah, just another technology. I'm out on that one. I haven't tried it yet, but absolutely, like, in those experiences, just not only feeling connection, but tapping into tapping into emotions and being able to actually break the emotion down.
Mhm.
Um, I- that is a technology that has,
Right.
right, because essentially you're making that process easier.
Right. Right. Yeah. Not being afraid to engage in that process.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
What do you think? Huh, what do you think causes people like you and I and plenty of others who are ready to go down? What is it that causes us to say I'm ready to go down that path, as opposed to like, because I know plenty of people who are like, well, and for many reasons, right?
Sure.
That's a complicated question, actually. Now I take it back, because I understand the reason why people are afraid, and that's the stigmatization of drugs, right, or
That's
substances.
certainly a huge part of it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's take it back. What made you want to go? Let's
I
individualize.
can only speak from my perspective or my experience. I mean, in some ways, I think I was born this way.
Yeah.
Just always been a seeker
Hmm.
and always been curious and never been happy or willing to just do it just because,
Yeah. Yep.
or never been much of a rule follower.
Yep.
I need to know why I'm following the rules and not just because someone said so.
Sure.
So, um, and absolutely, I have to acknowledge that, being a white man in this society gives me great privilege to explore those things
Sure.
and to do that without as much fear of retaliation or prosecution, incarceration.
Hmm.
Um, and you know, also now for me, and I also think for many people, what drives it is an innate desire to heal, to be whole.
Yep.
And so even for people for whom it's a great risk, there's still that desire to heal can, push a person through that or be willing to take that risk.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, I think it's those two things combined. I think many people are seekers.
Yeah.
We know that there's something more. We believe there's something more. We hope there's something more.
Sure.
Um, and and we see that the dominant paradigm is not working
Hmm.
for us or for society, for our brothers and sisters, for our communities, for the planet. and I guess we see these, psychedelic medicines as a technology for trying to solve that or break through that or explore that.
Yeah.
So I think that's, for many of us. And then there's the desire to heal.
Yeah.
And that, and we talk a lot about that in the study in particular.
Mm-hmm.
People who've lived with trauma for so long and have tried so many treatment approaches and medications. And, many people who come to the study have never done any drugs that weren't prescribed to them.
Yeah.
And they're willing to do this, sometimes even with a lot of fear and anxiety, because that desire to heal is so strong.
Yeah. 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 When people, when I have conversations with folks who are less, I guess, less objective when it comes to folks who use or who become addicted,
Mm-hmm.
there can be a kind of a finger pointing situation, like, why are you doing this? Like, you're a drug addict. I'm like, well, take a second. And someone who is we'll say there's heavy heroin use in San Francisco, right? There's a lot of that, right?
Right.
And you see that person who's not, you would walk down the street and you'd be like, man, that person is not all the way there. They're on drugs. My first thought is, what are you dealing with that you have to medicate that way, right? What is the trauma? That's trauma. That's what I see. When you need to heal, and this is healing you. You're able to live because this substance is assisting you in that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we could go on and on about why we don't look at people that way.
Right. Right. And yeah, how stigmatized that is, how much we stigmatize people for, choosing or, that being their only option.
Right.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, if they're not traumatized before they are living on the streets, after a short time of living on the streets, you're going to be traumatized.
Sure.
Right? And, and I have to be reminded that not everyone that doesn't represent everyone who uses heroin. That there's like,
no, not at all.
Huge numbers of people, right, who use heroin who don't end up in methadone clinics or don't end up on the street, or, I personally don't understand how that works, but, I know that people can apparently manage their heroin use and, and function.
Sure.
But, that's certainly not that way for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think we only have to look at alcohol to see that, there's a huge range of responses to different drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we've all been sort of programmed and brainwashed by the stigmatization of our culture.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, if you've got a bunch of money, you can do your heroin behind closed doors.
Right. Yeah.
You can afford.
Keith Richards pulled it off for years.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I was listening to somebody talk about that, about the kind of the people who use heroin and are fine, and they were talking about the purity of it and and that's with quite a few substances, right? Like,
right, the more money you have, the better quality stuff you can get.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. There was a doctor talking about that. He's like, yeah, I forgot what interview I was watching. I think it was on Joe Rogan. But there was a physician on. There was I forgot what kind of doctor he was. Yeah, maybe psychopharmacology. Yeah, I forgot what kind of. Either way, but he was talking. He was like, yeah, I use it often, but I'm also getting I'm getting top tier stuff.
Right.
And that was the first time I've ever heard anybody openly speak about it.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think he's a professor at Columbia.
Oh, I know this guy. I can't think of his name, but
Black dude, dreads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he just wrote a book, actually. I think I'm gonna go pick it up because he said he's like, yeah, man, I use heroin. Like I use cocaine. I use MDMA. Like they're substances. Like,
Yeah.
and yeah, it just made me think about how the stigma behind it.
Hmm.
We have criminalized putting something in your body.
Right.
Like what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, let's just start with that. Yeah.
Right, like it's illegal for you to choose what you put in your body.
Yeah. Particularly this plant or that mushroom. Yeah.
Like I mean, it's simplistic, but it really is like the root. Like what the fuck? I don't.
Right. And we could say, heroin is a plant-based medicine.
Yeah, easy,
Right. So,
easy.
yeah.
So you grew up in Louisiana, right?
Texas and yeah, that whole Gulf Coast area. Yeah.
Gulf Coast area. Okay, so yeah, early exposure. Was that the culture you grew up around, or was that not it, and that's why you moved to the West Coast?
There's so much in that question. um, I'd certainly say I grew up in a very, permissive culture.
Mm,
Well, primarily around alcohol.
yeah,
Like
mm,
alcohol use is so socially acceptable in that
absolutely.
part of the country. Um, Everyone in my family drank, and it was sort of normal and expected that you would start drinking. Sneaking it by the age of like 12,
Yep.
and then more socially acceptable with the family at family gatherings and things like that. And so, but in terms of drugs, be other than alcohol or cigarettes, no, that was not something that was acceptable or visible.
Mm,
But again, my curiosity.
yeah.
And so that was something I started exploring by about the age of 14.
Okay.
And, um, you know, everything was pretty readily available. I was very lucky that my exploration began before MDMA was made illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get to sort of sneak in under the wire and have that experience.
Yeah.
They made it illegal in 1986. But yeah, it was certainly stigmatized, and I was aware of that, and I went to great lengths to sort of hide that. And,
Yeah.
there were certain friends that you shared that experience with, and your family and other friends, and you knew you would be judged for that, or worse, sort of told on. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, and yet through a lot of that, I maintained, I was a good student, maintained good grades, and all of that.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's another thing that goes to show, like, because the dominant message was, oh, you're going to be a dropout, or
Right.
you're going to be worthless, or end up on Skid Row, as they would say.
Mm.
Um, but it's not always the truth. Some of us go on to get PhDs, and so,
Now you said you spent majority of time on the Gulf Coast, in what high school, up until
yeah,
high school.
yeah, yeah. And then I moved to Austin when I was about 18, and went to UT Austin
Oh,
there.
okay.
Yeah. And then after that, went back and did graduate school there as well. And then after that, went back to New Orleans.
To New Orleans. So Austin always been the hot spot. Oh, are people now just kind of well, but not now. People have picked up on something.
Yeah, been for a while, I would say. It was still a pretty quiet, small college town when I first made it there.
Yeah,
Um, and it has changed a lot since then.
could imagine.
Yeah,
Could
yeah,
imagine. So pretty, but still, I mean, I guess it's a college town, right? So
yeah.
you would
And
think,
Austin was pretty permissive and liberal, and so
okay.
it was a great place to be able to explore more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm slowing down because I got to think back now and make sure I'm about to provide an accurate report of what was going on
Uh-huh.
back then. Because I think there was a period of time in undergrad
Mm.
where it really was primarily just more about weed and alcohol.
Sure.
Um, and yeah, and then it was in graduate school that I began to explore psychedelics more.
Sure.
Um, so I'm pretty sure that's accurate, but if you find other sources, let me
Oh man, no, no, no. I'm taking your word for it, man. I'm not going to, I'm not investigating.
know.
Would you, knowing what you know now, would you have started a little bit earlier if you had access?
Well, so I'll back up and say I think the first time I experienced LSD, I was 16.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Um,
Yep.
yeah. So, I probably wouldn't have started any earlier than that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But what I wish was different is that, for example, in, the Huichol culture and tradition and the Southwest and Mexico and in Peru, where sometimes young children, but certainly adolescents, are introduced to and have access to, peyote, for example, with the
Mhm.
Huichol people, and ayahuasca in Peru. I'm not sure how young children start, for example, with the Bwiti people of West Africa, but I think pretty young as well.
Mm.
But where it's done in a context, and you have the
Mm.
support of your elders,
Yep.
and it is safe and sort of sanctioned,
Yep.
that would have been a huge difference. And that's what I would wish for our culture, is
Yep.
where we can get to a point where these technologies
Mm.
can be safely explored in a way that children and adolescents don't have to put themselves at risk.
Yeah.
Um, so even though, as we know, psychedelics, the drugs themselves, are incredibly safe in terms of a safety profile of a drug,
Yeah.
but as young people, we do stupid things to access them or to experience them.
Yeah.
So it would be nice if we could do that around a campfire with our elders and
Right.
our same age peers, if
Right.
this is something we wanted to explore at 16 or 17 or 18.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the one thing I wish were different. Um, I wish I would have had access to accurate information rather than Nancy Reagan's bullshit.
That's right. There you go.
Um, yeah, yeah. Thankfully, I'm old enough. I just escaped the DARE programs. I didn't get that brainwashing.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and like I said, I knew it was all bullshit on some level.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it would have been nice to have access to accurate information.
Yeah.
And we're certainly still not there in schools.
Oh no, not at all. Not nowhere near. I mean, I noticed that one. I just saw somebody with the. I think now I know Dare. Like I've seen people with like Dare shirts, but it's like a more like you know satire, like being funny. Like
Right. Yeah. Right. Now they're vintage.
now they're vintage, right? But since I was in Virginia, I did see somebody with a Dare bumper sticker, and I was like, "Oh shit, I haven't seen that in a
Yeah.
long time."
Yeah.
That funny enough, funny enough, I saw someone driving with the Dare sticker, and then this woman. It was like a scene from a movie.
Mhm.
I'm in Roanoke, Virginia, and it's like a smaller town right outside of Blacksburg, where Virginia Tech is.
Mhm.
And so it's got like a kind of quaint downtown area, but there's really nobody walking outside. Like there's no one outside, right? Like,
Right.
and so the car passes by, and like I look, and then like I turn back around, and there's this like older woman, this older white woman, very very pale, and she's like getting kind of close. And I'm not scared, but I'm trying to figure out, like, why she must be like, she's getting ready to say something. And I'm like, all right, what are you getting ready to say? Like, what? And she just goes, Jesus is coming. And I was like, oh,
Today?
yeah, like, right. Like, and normally that's the conversation I dive into. If somebody comes up to me with something like that, I'm like, yeah, let's, what? Talk to me about Jesus. Tell me when he's
You
coming.
take all those people.
Yeah. And then I was just kind of looking at her, and that, like, the dare sticker and this, I was like, oh my, I'm in a movie. I'm in a movie. Where's the camera? Where's the camera? Okay, something bad's about to happen soon. There's got like thunder, lightning. She's gonna turn into something. And then she just kept walking, and like I watched her walk down the street, and I'm telling you, there was like no one on the street, which is what made it even kind of eerie, like creepy.
Right,
I'm like,
right.
ugh. All right. Anyway, um, but yeah, when I have these conversations, I mean, I've had majority of these conversations with my community that are of color.
Hmm.
It's still very, very sensitive, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Still very sensitive, and this is even with this crowd. I would say that there are communities of color that maybe with that are in the upper upper middle class,
Hmm.
who are starting to explore, right? And
Right.
but uh and yeah, I mean, I think within, obviously hip hop is a major influencer in every culture, but there was like a lot of references to MDMA or Molly, right?
Hmm.
And
Right.
and it was interesting because when I was listening to rappers talk about it, it's totally the opposite of my experience, right? And many
Hmm.
of the experiences from other friends, like I was like, oh man, I only met a couple people who like to take MDMA and like listen to hip hop and like break down like lyrics, and like that's their thing.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
as we both share a passion for electronic music, like that's
Right.
usually where I would go, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. See, I was doing that with marijuana and Public Enemy and NWA, and
yeah.
it's too bad I wasn't doing it with MDMA. That would have been, yeah, a
A
different experience,
totally
perhaps.
different experience, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting where those conversations, and this kind of goes back into the kind of the sociocultural aspect, right?
Hmm. Right.
Mentioning that you're using cocaine, or mentioning that you're using some type of substance outside of weed.
Hmm.
Again, specifically within some communities of color, is kind of alarming, right? It's
Right.
like, wait, what? Like, there's some of the looks and some of the conversations I've had. You would this goes back to crack epidemic of the
Hmm.
'80s, right?
Hmm.
We are seeing the repercussions of that. We're seeing um,
Right.
what happened, right?
Right. And how much that is a legacy, I guess, of slavery and
Hmm.
emancipation and the attempt to keep, Black people controlled and
Hmm.
subservient.
Yeah, yeah. So it's odd sometimes when I'm like, I think the common message in some historically has been like, oh, you must hang out with white people, right? I'm like, well, yes, I do. That's I do hang out with white people. um, but, but
Specifically because of your interest in psychedelics, or?
I've since I've been a kid, my mom's Mexican, my dad's black.
Mhm.
Early on, I think this is one of the struggles that biracial kids can have,
Mhm.
specifically black and mixed with something else.
Mhm.
Black enough, or in my
Right.
case, are you Mexican enough?
Right.
And going through that identity struggle, and what does it mean, right?
Mhm.
So, I was exposed to everyone, and that's one of the privileges that I had growing up in San Francisco.
Mhm.
And, coming from a household that preached acceptance, you know,
Mhm.
um, and being exposed to, I went to private schools early. Um, I went to private schools my entire life until college. And I talked about this. I talk about this many times when I go down, my educational journey. I went to school with predominantly Jewish kids um, until eighth grade,
Mm-hmm.
and then once I graduated and went to high school, all Catholics, like majority Catholics, and to see
Mm-hmm.
the shit talking that was going on, and in my mind, I'm like, so every all of you are white, right? Like in my mind, I'm like, y'all are white and you still talking shit about each other. Like, god damn, this is strange. Like, I am, what the fuck? And so I was fascinated by this, and my exposure, again, I appreciated everyone. I'm like, oh damn, okay. Like, that curiosity, I'm curious about people. I'm like, who are you? What's your story? I want to talk, just like that lady who's talking to me about Jesus. I'm like, I, I don't necessarily want to, you know, wait on Jesus,
Yeah.
but I'm interested to know who you are and why you're walking down the street
Mm-hmm.
and you decide to talk to me. And so, yeah, that curiosity for people has always been there, and
And
I've
like
never,
you said, it's how you were raised. It sounds like
yeah,
your parents did an amazing job and instilled some of that in you.
yeah,
Yeah, along with your sort of innate curiosity.
sure. So I don't think I've ever fit into a silo per se, right? I've never fit in somewhere, and that's where I stay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can be hard for people to recognize when they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
someone, right? It's easy
Right.
for us to just put you in a category and
We want a simple answer. Yeah.
simple answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think with early on there was definitely, I was a swimmer all the way until I was 13. There was
Mm-hmm.
not a ton of black folks. I mean, even though again I had a unique situation, majority of my team was not white.
Mm.
In a sport dominated by
Yeah.
by white people, right? And
Right.
like wealthy white people.
Right.
Um, so yeah, when I told people I was going to swim practice, they're like, oh, white people be like, well, that's what white people do. Like, I'm like, yeah, I guess. Well, in a sense, yes, that's true. But not true that folks of color don't. There's
Right.
definitely,
But the rest of that answer has to do with like access. Like, yes, I
yeah,
could do it because they have access to it. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I had Taiwanese, Chinese, Black, Latino, Latinx. I just had a cocktail. Like,
This was in San Francisco.
yeah, this was
Right.
in San
Nice.
Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I had the early exposure, and and then when I on the same end when I the way the way I spoke. I get criticism from other community. Oh, you sound like you're white.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, that always happened. I mean, even I went to a historically black college, Norfolk State University in Norfolk, Virginia,
Mm-hmm.
and what a I don't use this word often, but what an amazing experience
Mm-hmm.
to come from San Francisco. Again, a lot of me is San Francisco, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to go there and then just to witness that environment, that learning environment, especially
Mm-hmm.
at that developmental part of my life,
Yeah.
um, really unique to be around a lot of black folks that were from everywhere.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Believe me, I was just happy to be around like Xavier and Southern and Grambling and
uh-huh.
to witness those schools. And yeah, it's, I can imagine it's a powerful experience to attend one of those schools.
Yeah, I was in a text thread um, with two classmates of mine, and they were asking about historically black colleges having maybe some, you know, more insight on mental health, specifically for folks of color. And
Mm-hmm.
this was I think there's been more conversation as Kamala Harris has, been
Mm-hmm.
recognized as a historically black college grad and the
Mm-hmm.
first, first female black vice president, and
Hmm.
Asian Indian. You know what I mean? Like,
Bring a lot of intersectionality to the White House.
man, beautiful. The
Yeah,
beautiful
yeah.
intersectionality. So, uh, I talked about that. I was like, well, I think one of the difficult things, well, to answer the question is yes, but one of the reasons why is everyone on the campus doesn't have to worry about being black. We can
Hmm.
move on.
Right.
We can move on to you as an individual, right? And it really does bring this conversation of humanity up, right? So
Hmm.
yes, even within this, it has nothing to do with the skin tone. We're talking about a diversity of people, because even if you do use the umbrella term of black or African American, there's so much there's so much in that. There's so much diversity within that, and I was trying to, um, they were, there wasn't like one of those teaching moments, but I was just sharing that experience of, um, the amount of diversity within Black culture, right? And that's kind of one of the issues when it comes to mental health. We're still trying to categorize people,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Oh well, can you? Yes, a Black therapist might be great for someone who's Black, but that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
And that's a concept that, yeah, we as white people majority do not grasp
yeah,
because we don't see it from the inside.
sure,
Uh, yeah, whiteness sort of dominates everything, and
yeah.
we don't see that. Yeah.
So yeah, either way, when I got there, I mean, I still early on when I got there, I was just so different. I don't there not a ton of people from California, and specifically the Bay Area. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, it was, early on, there was definitely questions about like what was I, and you know,
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
of my some of my opinions didn't necessarily align, uh,
Hmm.
with the majority, going back to like faith, right?
Hmm.
Faith is a big, faith is a major thing. Specifically, we were talking about Christianity and the
Hmm.
church.
Right.
Um,
You're in the heart of the Bible Belt there.
and
Yeah.
man, I was not, I I was naive. That's what it was. I was a little naive, a lot of naive actually. Um, and this was an example of the bubble that I came from.
Hmm.
You know, uh, I wasn't, necessarily as receptive as I could have been to the experiences of other people, and how religion has been so transformational,
Hmm.
for the Black communities in the area. Not that I didn't know that, but to
Yeah.
come to it in firsthand and like talk to people my age about their experiences,
Yeah.
totally,
And
totally different.
particularly in the South, it's still so strong in the
Yeah,
South. Yeah.
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 Um, so yeah, I mean, either way, yeah, it's always been one of those things about, like, oh, like what's your story? What's your deal? You do these things that don't necessarily fall in line with what you should be doing, right?
Hmm. Right.
And I'm proud of that. I love that about myself. I
Yeah.
love that people aren't able to just put me in a box.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm gonna just circle back. Like this kind of came up around this conversation of, yeah, being a black man in the field of, or in the space of psychedelics, and
Yeah.
getting that question, oh, isn't that a I guess a white person thing?
Hmm.
I know, I hear that as well, and the work that we have to do to diversify this space and make it more inclusive, and also, I think part of that is. Um, Breaking down the stigma and the real danger in terms of incarceration and
Mm,
that sort of thing, and also like reconnecting people with knowledge and wisdom traditions where, you know like in Africa there are lots of medicines that are used,
sure.
and this had, the experience today in the United States has not always been, and to be able to break through that and move beyond that, and make this space, yeah, more inclusive.
Sure.
Yeah, and we're making inroads. I hope it
Mhm.
feels like,
Yeah.
and just so kind of go back to one of the earlier questions, sort of losing sight of, or I have to remember that as well. Like I want it now.
Yeah.
I want it now.
Yeah.
Having to zoom out and go, okay, we're doing it.
Mm.
We're moving in a positive direction, and hopefully we can get there faster over time. But
Yeah.
yeah,
What's
we're
what's
still
made you, what's made you practice this kind of this theme of cultural humility and not and not, you know, I think I, what's coming to mind is like cultural taxation, where you're going to other people. It's their job. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to put the pressure on you, and I'm going to rely on you to do this work.
Mhm,
I don't know if this is, this is still my early stage of like exposure to this psychedelic community that
mhm,
we do recognize is still dominated by white folks, right?
mhm, mhm,
I don't know if everyone is as welcoming or is not even welcoming, ready to have those conversations. You know what
mhm,
I mean? Because as much as I love, hey, I've met plenty of people that do psychedelics, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they've done the work to
right,
that they've done the work to have conversations around race and social justice advocacy. Um,
right.
so yeah, where do you get that from? Maybe it's because you lived in New Orleans, man. You have some exposure, like you said.
That absolutely has a lot to do with it.
Mm,
And I am so grateful for having not, it was, absolutely far from perfect. And, I'd say at the time I was really blind to, particularly as a child, blind to the injustices of, the community and the society.
no,
And I'm also so grateful to have not grown up in some white suburb, somewhere, and to have had, from preschool and kindergarten to have had, black teachers, and
mm,
to have gone to school with black students, and so I think the answer to that question starts there,
yeah,
and beyond that, I kind of don't know. And as I reflect on it, it's like, what shouldn't, I mean, and I know that this not to be completely naive, but it's like, damn, but that's just the way it should be. Like,
yeah,
well, it sucks that we even sort of have to ask that question. It's almost like, what makes you a decent human being?
yeah,
But, but I recognize that's not the world that we live in. And, somewhere along the way, I, it certainly became an appreciation and kind of, debt of gratitude. Like
mm,
those experiences and those encounters, and um, you know, I mean, and all of it, music and food, and um, it's like I reap such incredible rewards from that, and it enriches my life in so much. Like I have a debt of gratitude to, to take this point of view and to be willing to have difficult conversations, and do what I can to move things forward. And so that's what comes to me at the moment as you
yeah.
ask that question.
Yeah. No, I'm fast. I mean, I think that's one of the more difficult things that I wrestle with at times. When I kind of, when I see people doing the work, and often, there's, I do have a very diverse. I like to think I have a pretty diverse community. But as we are in this kind of, not kind of, as we are in a major divide in the country, I do question. I have like that question comes up when it is around folks who aren't, actually it comes up for everyone. My like, what are you doing to help? What are you doing to support the cause? And it doesn't need to be, you outside with, with your sign and marching, but you know, we all can play a role, and I do think I've become more and more critical um of white people at this point.
Sure.
Um,
It's
to
well
try,
founded. Yes.
yeah, like, so what exactly are you doing now? Like, it's on the news, it's mainstream, it's right in front, smack dab in front of your face.
Right.
You know, the times when you didn't want to have that conversation at the dinner table because it was uncomfortable, which I recognize, right? I recognize, you know, we all have been at dinner tables regardless of our ethnic background and been uncomfortable because, you know,
The one 2 weeks ago. Yes.
we've
My
all been
parents.
there
Yes.
before.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I have to say, I have to add this as well. Um, I think my experience is absolutely colored by growing up as a gay man in the South
mm,
at the time that I did,
no.
and the sort of the discrimination that I experienced, within my own family.
Oh yeah.
Um, so that, I think, certainly colors that experience for me and motivates me, and um, so yeah, that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah. 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 And isn't it strange how I think it's not strange, but folks who, like folks who go through something are able to kind of see across the line a little easier.
You hope so.
I that's what
Yeah,
I found. I'm totally speaking in generality. I'm totally
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, I would hope so. But sadly, it's obviously not always true.
sure.
Man, sure, if you face some adversity in your life, hopefully that makes you a more compassionate person.
Yeah,
But
not always.
yeah,
Not
not always.
so yeah, it's just yeah, those things have been difficult. That's why I asked you that question because I you know,
I appreciate that question. It's good to reflect and
yeah, I look at I don't know as we talk about this time of reflection, right? Just not al- almost having too much time to reflect, like, whoo. Um, I want, like, I'm curious sometimes, like, what are people reflecting on? I know I'm in, you know, I know I'm constantly doing that, constantly, and sometimes, like I said, sometimes I recognize it's too much, but that's a unique part of my life right now, right? Being in graduate school and figuring out what's the next step. Also trying to enjoy the chaos, enjoy this learning. Um,
Mhm.
you know, this recognizing that this won't ever happen again. This moment, that's gone, right?
Yeah.
Like that tomorrow when I wake up, this conversation that took place, that's not going to happen again, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely enjoy this time of, I'd say, formal education and learning.
yeah,
Certainly the learning and education continues, but you're right. Yeah, it is a special time to have that structure in place to do that.
yeah. Saturday, I'm flying to Jamaica, and I will be there for minimum 2 months,
Oh,
and
incredible.
yeah, and then I'm thinking about going to one more island, but you know, work is remote, internships
Yeah,
remote, schools remote. So you know what? Let me think about as I reflect on this.
yeah.
If I need a change of environment, what is it that I need? I'm a huge
Nice.
swimmer. I need to swim every day. When I don't swim, I'm not myself.
Hmm.
And pools are closed. I was doing open water swimming, but that water got cold.
Ooh, yeah.
Woo, I don't mind cold, but that water
I'm a
got
big no on that. Absolutely not. Being from the Gulf Coast, no. Now the Caribbean, it doesn't get better than that.
and that's why I was like, once I get it's going to be a reconnection, and I've never been there before, and I'm hoping that there's something spiritually that happens as well, because
Mm.
that,
Hmm.
you know what I mean, not only being reconnected to the water, but taking some time, maybe I meet some great people who I can talk to. Not maybe, I'm going to. I know that's what kind of person I am. I'm going to meet people.
Yeah,
And
you're gonna meet.
Yeah, I'm gonna
And
be.
people in the Caribbean, they're friendly. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and and so yeah, I'm hoping. I've emailed some professors down at some universities down there, maybe participate in some classes and in social work or something related. I just want to learn. I'm again that I'm
Mhm.
curious, and I do think that there isn't a ton of discussion outside of you know maybe reggae, which is cool. Music is is a really important part of culture. But what's the
Absolutely.
other side? Like
Yeah.
what is the historical significance of the Caribbean islands and the transatlantic slave trade? Right,
Hugely significant. Yeah,
hugely,
yeah,
hugely
yeah,
significant, and why is it? Yeah, we go on for hours. That's a whole nother podcast in itself.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, yes, I hope you find deep connection with spirituality and spirit of place all
yeah,
over. Yeah.
I'm really excited, man. And I almost today was the first day where I couldn't really figure it out, but I started to get like a little emotional, like I was
Mm,
leaving. Not that I'm not coming back or anything, but I just started getting emotional thinking about going to Jamaica. Like,
mhm, mhm.
um, and I'm like, oh damn, I'm about to take, like I'm taking advantage of this time that I don't know if this is ever going to happen again, right? Like,
Mhm,
I'm a traveler. I like moving. I love new environments, and yeah, I mean, even talking about it now, like I can feel like
mhm,
emotion. I can just feel it coming up. Like, man, you're about to live this in this place,
mhm.
for 2 to 3 months, and while you're finishing your last semester of grad school, and
Yeah.
while you're exploring so many different avenues of life. Um, so yeah, man, I don't know what was going on earlier today. I had to sit down for a second, like, what is going on with you, man? But it was good. It felt good.
You're strong. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it felt real good.
Yeah.
Um, so what's I don't want to hold you all night, but where what are you excited about with the latest research and
Mm,
conversations around psychedelics? Um,
yeah.
yeah, what are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited about getting a vaccine tomorrow so that we can.
Hey.
What vaccine number one?
Yep.
Yeah. Because right now, certainly the focus is on finishing this phase 3 MDMA study.
Mm,
And part of that for some of us on the team is getting vaccinated so we can do these in-person visits and
yep.
get this moving along. So I'm really excited about getting MDMA kind of across the finish line
Oh,
and hopefully getting MDMA rescheduled, getting an indication for the treatment of PTSD,
yep.
and then that opens up avenues for a lot more research. What else can we, what else is it good for?
Yeah.
And there, MAPS certainly has plans for that. Um, I'm excited about to go back. I'm excited about diversification of the field.
Hmm.
Let's keep that moving forward. And I'm excited about some, hopefully some new things down the line. There's an incredible molecule called 5-MeO-DMT
Okay.
that really hasn't been well researched, and I'm hopeful for some clinical trials at some point in the near future to explore that. I have deep reverence, love, respect, and appreciation for Iboga
Mm,
um, and ibogaine as well. And there's no research being done in the United States,
mm,
and hopefully that will change. Hopefully we can start to explore that. Um, there's an incredible amount of research happening with psilocybin right now. It's probably going to be right behind MDMA and getting approved.
no.
And and I have to speak about the thing that does concern me a bit with all of these things as this research moves forward, and that's the commercialization of it. And yeah, the effect of the poison of capitalism
Yep.
and the lack of access that is built into that system. and we're taking things that are often available for free from the earth,
Yeah.
and now restricting them.
Yep.
And how do we navigate that? Um, how do we address that? The whole idea, and as someone who obviously, I don't, my practice and so forth, I don't take insurance, but that right there restricts me to some people, to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But where I was going with that is, how do we, the whole idea for-profit medicine is nauseating or
Yeah.
infuriating. How do we change that system? And
Mm,
how are psychedelics a part of that? Are they a part of that?
mm,
And I'm not naive. I know it's happening. And for reasons I can't fully understand or comprehend, it has to happen.
yeah.
This is how it comes into the wider consciousness. This is how it begins to be available. I guess for some reason it's important that it be part of mainstream medicine.
Yeah.
And I would like to envision a world where we can have both. We can have, the Native American church or ayahuasca churches or mushroom churches, or we can work with these. In my worldview and my cosmology, these are sacraments,
Mm,
and everyone who wants to partake should have access to the sacraments.
yeah.
Um, to me, that is our, God-given right, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, I, while I'm deeply involved in this, clinical research and in making these medicines available, I also advocate, for sensible drug policy and, decriminalization of all these substances and
Mm,
cognitive liberty. I think that's a big part of it. And that is, absolutely entwined with social justice and, you know, um, reformation of the criminal injustice system and system of, for-profit incarceration. And so that's a long list of things I'm excited about. But
well, I mean, you got to be excited about something, man. I mean, Jesus.
yeah,
um, and that's really good to hear that you talk about, even, even though you don't accept insurance, that's active. That's active in your head, right? Like, okay, if I don't accept insurance, well, in what way can I?
so I do sliding scales, fees,
Yeah.
slots, and things like that. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, this is great to hear. Again, I told you I was in this exploratory phase of everything, but specifically with how I want to support people using um, plant-based medicines. And I told you that first conversation and around indigenous practices, and
Mhm.
you know that really made me take like 10 steps back, right? Because I wanted to be extremely careful about how I approach this. And again, talking about cultural humility,
Mhm.
learning first, really getting some knowledge, and then figuring out what pathway, whether that's policy, right? I think policy is absolutely imperative, right? As we talk about, like, not even just, I mean, this was important because I think one thing that I can do right now is continue to normalize the conversation.
Speaking out, yeah,
Yeah,
being visible, yeah,
just talking about it and normalizing it, like like the more people, and I mean, it's clearly happening,
yeah.
right? There are more and more people coming out because, like you said before, clearly the shit we were doing before has not worked.
And not only did it not work, it fucked shit up horribly. Yeah. God.
So yeah, as like when I heard you talk, I was like, yeah, I gotta get connected to you because I could pick that energy up, you know, and
Thank
um,
you, brother.
and there's a chance. I know you said you're near Hillsborough. There's a chance I might be coming out to reside in the Santa Rosa area.
Ah,
And
uh-huh.
there's some great work to be done within school systems there.
Yeah.
and I've been partnering with one of my professors to facilitate groups, and yeah, she's she's the she's the lady you want to kind of follow in terms of her work ethic, her energy. Very just motivating. I think every time I talk about her, I like have to sit and think about everything that she does. Shout out to Erica Bosky. She has her own private practice, Keystone Love. She's a doula. She's a mother of four, getting her PhD. Uh, uh, Professor at San Francisco State, counselor at Santa Rosa, in the Santa Rosa School District.
Yeah, come up this way. There's, I've been it's been so nice there's a lot more diversity up here, I think, than people necessarily think.
That's what she was telling me.
There's a perception, I think, of Sonoma County as just a very white, and it is, in
Yeah.
terms of like numbers, but there's some really wonderful communities, and there's a lot more just richness and diversity, and I'm really enjoying learning about that and experiencing that up here.
Yeah, she was just talking. I mean, just in conversation. That's really what I was talking about. I was like, yeah, what's the community like in terms of just conversing? And she was like, oh, everything you want to talk about, you
Mhm.
absolutely anything you want to talk about, you can do it up here. I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So she's pulling me towards it. We'll see. You know what I mean? I mean, I think there's some opportunities there.
And there's rich psychedelic history up here too. So yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm gonna keep bugging you about how to support and questions and how all that goes.
Anytime. Yes, anytime. You know, I feel like that is a sort of a gift and an opportunity that I have. I stand on the shoulders of giants. I
Mhm.
received incredible support and training and mentorship from who I consider elders.
Mhm.
And so the opportunity to be able to pass that on and to support people who want to come into the field, yes,
Yeah,
anytime.
yeah. Did you get your? Oh yeah. Did you get your turntable set up yet?
I did, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, Actually, one of them needs to go to the shop. It's everything's working, but it's not producing any sound. So
Okay.
there's probably a wire in there that needs to be soldered or something. But
Okay. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
remember last time we talked, you're like, "Yep, just trying to get set up here so I can." Yeah, it's one thing I'm missing out here. I haven't touched the turntables in shit well over 2 months, and
yeah.
that's absolutely been part of the everything healing, curiosity,
Music,
driving
music, music is part of it all.
part of it all.
So necessary. Yeah.
Just did a podcast earlier today with a friend of mine who's getting his PhD in, I think it's conducting, music
Wow.
conducting. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and just
Uh-huh.
listening to him talk about that, and then he sent me music. I got lost for about 2 hours. I was like, oh
Uh-huh.
damn it! there you
Yeah.
there you
What a
go.
nice way to get lost, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Well, brother, thank you so much for this opportunity. Really enjoyed talking and yeah,
it won't
hearing
be.
your story, getting to know more about you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll do this again, man.
Absolutely.
Before I let you go,
Hmm.
I ask everyone on the podcast to reflect and think about something that you love or that you're in love with right now.
Hmm. God. I mean, as cliche as it sounds, I'm in love with life, with um, the opportunity that I've been blessed with to live this life that I live,
Mm-hmm.
and to not only to do the work that I do, but to get to have the experiences that I do and um, connect with people. I mean, like this, my clients, and learn from people. It's such a gift.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate it. All right. Well, take care of yourself. I'll bug you at some point to pick your brain or figure out how I can support.
And please let me know how things are going in Jamaica, man.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I want to hear all about that.
yeah, man. I'm sure I'll have some good. I'm sure I'll have some good stories.
Yeah, I hope so. If you're doing
Cool.
it right.
Yeah. All right, brother. I'll talk to you later.
Take care.
Bye.
Be well.